Right, so in my last video talking about AEW and the current state of the product, I briefly touched on my problems with the women's division and how they could improve their booking of the women's division, and I decided that after the events that I saw last night that I need to do an extended video because I think AEW just keeps shooting themselves in the foot with their women's division and is constantly setting themselves back. So AEW and their booking of their women's division has always been a point of contention since really the inception of the company. I remember the days of AEW Dynamite when they would fly women's champion Hikaru Shida out just to have her stand in the crowd during COVID times. I remember when Riho and Nyla Rose were hardly getting a lick of TV time as women's champions. I remember when Mariah May won the women's championship and hardly got an in-ring promo during her booking as champion. It's been a constant issue in AEW that the women's division could always be better, and not just better, but a lot better. They are constantly holding themselves back. It's something that every now and then there's a glimmer of hope that things are about to change, but then they just go back to normal again and it's just back to how it was. Fell for it again award. I feel there's many opportunities AEW has had to take the women's division to the next level and just expand it and do more with it, with more belts and more tournaments and more matches on shows and more exposure, but they simply just choose not to for whatever reason. However, on last night's edition of AEW Dynamite, there was actually an extremely rare 2 women's matches on the card. You had Alex Windsor and Riho up against Emi Sakura and Mercedes Moné. I thought this was a fairly fun match. I particularly enjoyed the work of Alex Windsor in this match, with Alex Windsor and Riho picking up the win as we build up to Riho versus Mercedes Moné for the TBS title at AEW All Out. And then you had Toni Storm and Sky Blue having a Philadelphia street fight in maybe the best match of September so far, or one of the best matches of September so far in my opinion. Very enjoyable match. Sky Blue never misses in a death match in my opinion and has been really impressive and very consistent since she returned from injury, and Toni Storm is of course great as always. This Philadelphia street fight of course took place in Philly, you big dumb bitches, and yeah, Toni Storm of course picks up the win here following a brutal match of mousetrap spots and Sandman tributes, as I said. Very good stuff. And yeah, for me, I thought this was great that there were 2 women's matches on this card with both of them succeeding. In my last video talking about the AEW current product, I talked about the absence of the top babyfaces in the company, Ospreay, Swerve, and Kenny Omega, and how this is a great opportunity now to give more time for the women on TV and give them that extra match and extra segment that they wouldn't usually get. We of course got that here on Dynamite, but then following this match, there was a match announcement for the women's match on AEW Collision this Saturday, and unless they announce any other matches for the show, which to be honest I kind of don't think they are, this is going to be the only women's match on the show as it's another all-star tag. As you can see, it's a 10-woman 500k 5-on-5 collision with Jamie Hayter, Ty Mello and Anna Jay, Chris Statlander and Harley Cameron taking on Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, and the Triangle of Madness of Tekla, Julia Hart and Sky Blue, with Toni Storm on commentary, as we've shoved 11 women all into one segment and just said, hey, fuck it, let's just make it for some money. It's uninspired, it's lazy, and it's uncreative booking. It's just annoying that this keeps happening because the all-star tag format has now been absolutely rinsed out, because every week on Collision it's just the same rotation of women coming in for a 4v4 or a 3v3 or now a 5v5, and it's just so uninspiring and it hasn't really been memorable in the slightest, to be honest. No one is going to remember any of these particular tag matches as being one of the best. They all kind of just blend into one. And yeah, like I said, I don't expect any more women's matches to be announced for the show because this is pretty much the rotation of the all-star tag women that go on Collision every week all into one. And yeah, it's just a shame that we had a glimpse of some good booking on AEW Dynamite for the women's division just to go straight back to this, just setting themselves back, like I said, just shooting themselves in the foot. It's so lazy. And I also am getting kind of bored of the whole money stipulation. At first I didn't mind it because it's an obvious thing to fight for, and it's good to actually have a motivation for some of these matches rather than just have randomly booked matches with no motivation for them. Money's a motivation, it makes sense. However, it's been rinsed and repeated once again, especially for these women's matches. There's no stake, no storyline. It's just, hey, sure, let's just get some money to add stake. And then also this past week on AEW Dynamite, we had a $500,000 10-man tag with the men, so I guess it makes sense why they're repeating it with the women. Sure, they're trying to make it parallel. However, with this 10-man one on Dynamite, the Young Bucks were in the winning team, and if you don't know, their whole gimmick has been that they're broke, they've lost their EVP roles, and so when they won this match, it was a huge celebration, and it maybe felt like the climax of these money tag matches. It felt like maybe a good way to take a quick break from doing these, because there's been 1 or 2 per week now at this point. But no, they just then announced another all-star 500k women's tag for Collision. I think there's so much more they could be doing. Literally, there's 10 women in here that could be split into 2, even 3 matches on the show. You could do a tag match with Ty Mello and Anna Jay against Sky and Julia, or Megan and Penelope or something. You could do Stat versus one of them, Jamie versus one of them. You could do Stat and Harley Cameron teaming up. You could literally do so many things. Or better yet, you could get any of the women who aren't in this rotation of these 5v5 tag matches, like Deonna Purrazzo or Riho or Hikaru Shida or Thunder Rosa or Billy Starks, anyone, and have them have a compelling match on TV and get them doing something. But no, it's a refusal, it's laziness, they don't want to try anything, it seems. Just feels like we're going in circles. So much is halted when you do these women's tag matches and no progress is being made. Because once again, no storyline is progressing with these tag matches. It's just every week they just have the match and then there's a big post-match brawl and then they announce the next women's all-star tag for the next week. But yeah, hopefully by slim chance we do see another women's segment or match announced for this show. That would be nice. And hopefully Dynamite at the very least can keep up having the 2 women's matches per show, because it worked very well last night. There were 2 great matches. And then quotes from an interview Tony Khan did came out today where he was asked about a Women's Continental Classic, where he said, "We've got the Women's World title and the TBS title. I think that the Continental would be something very interesting. We had some injuries happen in the women's division earlier this year at the All In pay-per-view. I think it would be a great thing if we get the division healthy, where we've got all of our top fighters ready to go. That could be a really great thing. That's a very intense tournament with matches every week. I'm very open to it, especially if we can get all the top wrestlers healthy to compete." What is this excuse? Bro, you've just booked 11 women in one segment. The C2 has 12 people in total of it, 2 groups of 6 each. Just add 1 more woman from your stacked roster to this rotation here, and you could literally just do it if you really wanted to. Beyond just the women in this graphic, you got Mercedes Moné and Alex Windsor and Riho. Deonna Purrazzo is on the bench, Hikaru Shida's on the bench. Where's Thunder Rosa? Where's Athena? Where's Billy Starks? All these people could easily be in the women's C2. And Willow Nightingale as well. How could I forget her? It feels as though AEW and Tony Khan are just making excuses, honestly. I feel like the excuse of waiting for the women to get healthy has also been an excuse that has been used a lot this year in regards to the women's tag titles getting delayed and the Ring of Honor women's pure title getting delayed as well. Listen, I get injuries are tough to deal with, but there is so much depth and this roster is so stacked. There are so many women on the bench that you can put into that rotation and throw them in there. Queen Aminata, another one. You see what I mean? I can just name any woman on this roster who is more than capable of being able to compete in a women's C2 who is active right now. There's so many. How is the roster not being healthy an excuse? It's more than healthy. Right, here's some quick fantasy booking. Blue League, Chris Statlander, Athena, Shida, Jamie Hayter, Tekla, and Megan Bain. Gold League, Mercedes Moné, Deonna Purrazzo, Willow Nightingale, Mina Shirakawa, Billy Starks, and Ty Mello. And for this tournament, put the women's TBS title on the line and the New Japan Strong Women's title on the line and the Ring of Honor Women's title. Have that be the prize, like the first men's C2 were there with 3 belts on the line. It's so easy, right? I just came up with that on the fly and I think that'd be great. Yeah, I am worried about the future of the AEW Women's Division. I feel as though if things can't change now when there's a really good opportunity to do so, when will they? I'm also very worried for when Tony Storm and Mercedes Moné eventually lose their belts, because they have been the champions for so long and really the only 2 consistent weekly appearing people on AEW TV for the women's division. It seems like they're the only 2 that really get any sort of long-term storylines and long-term booking. And we've seen a glimpse of what happens to the women's division when Tony Storm isn't the champion. As I said before, when Mariah May was the champion, she hardly got any focus and her pay-per-view matches were given 2 weeks build at best, and she hardly cut an in-ring promo. I feel as though Chris Statlander should be the next women's champion and Willow Nightingale or Tekla should be the next TBS champion. And again, I just worry that they're not going to get the spotlight they deserve because AEW doesn't know how to book the women when Tony and Mercedes aren't around. And it makes me hesitant to see AEW introduce these new women's titles like the women's tag titles or the Ring of Honor Pure title, because it's just going to be mismanaged again. What's the point? They can't even manage their singles division correctly and we want more belts. So yeah, I'm just worried. I'm just worried because I really feel as though this is the time and it's such a good opportunity to do so, and they just are choosing not to take it. I'm really hoping that with this being the last show at the 2300 arena, they can leave these all-star tags behind and make them a fixture of the 2300 and just do some compelling booking with the women. Have them split off into separate arcs. Let's see a Ty J storyline. Let's see a separate storyline with Megan Bayne. Let's see Chris Statlander expand on her stuff with the Death Riders, and Jamie Hayter and Tony Storm finally resume their feud from 2022. The AEW women's division is so stacked, but you wouldn't know it because it's the same rotation of women every week, which yes, they're all fantastic and they do great, but there's so many people sitting on the sidelines at the same time, and even the women they're using aren't getting the proper spotlight to truly showcase themselves because they're stuck in these tag matches every single week. Hopefully I'm just overreacting and I'm calling it too early, and like I said, this is the last they do. But I don't really have any reason to trust AEW because once again, I fell for it so many times and I'm not going to fall for it again. I'm going to wait and see, and I'm just going to call it as I see it. I don't think AEW right now is booking the women's division very well, and it needs to improve. Like this video if you enjoyed, and comment down below what your thoughts on my take on AEW and their women's division booking is. This was a very loose video, it might have been a bit all over the place, but I just wanted to get my thoughts off because it kind of annoyed me seeing this match get announced. It's just creatively bankrupt to me, and I know they can do better, and I want better for the AEW women's division because I'm a big fan of the women's division, and I'm going to the AEW show in Manchester in December, and there's many of the AEW women's division that I want to see at the show, which I'm probably not going to because they're not going to get booked, and that's a shame. With the men's division, I don't really have to worry about seeing who I want to see. They always get their big stars on, but with the women's division, I'm worried I'm not going to get to see a Jamie Hayter match in the UK like I get to see, or see Harley Cameron do her antics, or see Megan Bayne squash someone. I want to see all these things, but I'm probably only going to get a fraction of it. And it just kind of makes you realize that the women's division is just a small part of the AEW landscape, and it should be far, far bigger, and they deserve it to be bigger. Anyway, I was yapping. I just interrupted the outro to say even more. Like and subscribe, guys, if you did enjoy this video. Comment down below what you thought. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.